All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out tonight. I'm State Representative Brad Fritz. I want to first start by thanking Melanie and Janet with the library for giving us the spot here. I know it's a little bit packed in, and some of you have some bigger venues called machine sheds, but I was afraid it might be a little bit nippy for a machine shed on in the middle of winter. But I also want to point out and thank Chad Willis from Indian Creek. He did give me the opportunity. I called him with an hour to spare, and just in case this meeting got incredibly big, that we could go over there. So just a thank you to him as well. I just want to start, give a little bit of background. I know why we're all here tonight. I want to make sure that the conversation stays pertinent to the Shabbona Lake State Park. We're fortunate enough to be joined by Chairman Zeke Rupnick. Chairman, it's kind of up to you. Do you want to be able to field some questions here moving forward, or are you just more so? Okay, perfect. Appreciate you guys from the Tribal Council coming out. I had told the chairman back when I had got started getting feedback back that I was going to end up opposing them on this issue, but should the issue pass, we'd work together to try to figure out, what's next. And so I hope we can stand by that in a cordial way. So, all right, tonight I want to go back, kind of explain where we're at up to here and what happened. I know some of you followed along very intently, and others may be a little bit new reading into this, and then I want to just give you the opportunity to ask questions. Happy to give you as much information as I can. This is a brand new issue to Illinois. It's unprecedented, and so I won't be able to give you all the answers because this has never happened before. So and then if you have questions of the chairman as well, happy to stand up here and have a little bit and kind of go through and talk about, what next steps are going to be for our community. So early on, about 5 days into my first term, I was approached by the chairman and the council about this issue 195 years ago. The agreement between the federal government and Shabbona himself. We went through, this bill was introduced to the General Assembly as an agreement from the Prairie Band to give those roughly 35 property owners the ability for them to have clear titles in exchange for the park itself. That's not the case? No, sir. Oh, that was my understanding of what the case was. But we'll move along. We'll circle back here. When we went through this whole deal, there was obviously, I sent out the survey and wanted to make sure that the community members, were heavily invested in that. Of that survey, of getting over well over 200 to 300 responses, 75% of you were adamantly against this happening. And so me as your representative, that is the position that I took moving forward. In that, the bill was brought to the House floor. I want to thank, oh my gosh, where'd she go? There she is back there. Becky, who came down, and she had testified in Springfield on behalf of the homeowners and the community. So the bill had passed the executive committee. In that point in time, chairman of the executive committee, Bob Rita, had asked Will Gazzardi, the representative who carried the legislation, he had asked him at point blank if he had fulfilled all the requirements of the House rules, to which he had said he had. We get into debate over this issue, and I had found that he had actually lied about that, and the paperwork was not filed, and so the bill was pulled from the record this spring. Senator Walker had taken it through the Senate, and it did get passed, and then we ran out of time at the beginning of this session. That's when I had this another community meeting by word of mouth, and I had asked you guys what you had wanted. You know, I felt there were only two ways to move forward, to, you know, negotiate some extra things into the language to see what we could come up with and let it go through, or you were going to have to pony up and be able to hire a lobbyist to be able to represent your interest. And through the generosity of the community, that was the direction that went. And so we get to lame duck session, which is right before the new General Assembly is sworn in, and the wee hour, or the evening of the last day of lame duck session, this bill had been brought to the floor, and it did, in fact, pass the House with 63 votes. In that point in time, I had found from the course of when the first debate happened to when our final debate happened, a few discrepancies in the story that I had not known prior to, and those were voiced out in debate. But here we are as it sits. So next step moving forward, the bill states that the IDNR will enter into a land management agreement with the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation, and if that agreement is not made, then the transfer does not happen. So I think that this is an important part to, you know, field questions from the community, kind of figure out what are some of the things that you want to make sure are in that agreement. You know, I've tried to represent your interests to the best of my ability throughout this whole process. The bill itself only passed with 63 votes, and when you have a super majority of 78, pulling off that many in support of what we were working on was pretty impressive in and of itself. So, well, thank you. At this point forward, that agreement has to be made. I'm going to continue to represent your interests through that. And like I had said, I had promised Chairman Rupnick in the beginning that should this pass, we'd try to figure out, you know, where we can come together as a community moving forward. And so I want to hear everything that you have tonight. To ask questions, again, I'll answer to the best of my ability and try to get back to you, but this is truly unprecedented, so the answers aren't necessarily black and white. So with that, what do you have for me? Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I want to thank you very much for all the work you've done. And of all the representatives we've ever had, you've been the most visible and worked the hardest. So I do applaud you for that. The thing I'm most concerned about, the tribe had said all along that if they entered into a deal with the federal government, they would make sure that we had clear title to our properties. So my question is, now that they've switched and they're making a deal with the state, why don't we have that agreement in there that we can have clear title to our properties?
So the federal, let me give a little bit and then go ahead. The federal government, and that was the premise of the argument for this whole bill in the first place, the federal government is the only ones who can initiate treaty and take treaty away. And so that was my argument as this was being on the floor, debated on the floor, is this is a federal issue. And I don't think anybody's in disagreement about it being a federal issue. However, when this goes through, there would still be unclear title on those remaining properties until the federal government will take action on it. And that was my biggest problem with this in the first place. And you know why I talked to you in the beginning and said, can we make this contingent upon the federal government taking action? So Zeke, feel free to.
Yeah. The reason why I said that is that the state park and the actions with the state are not part of the federal legislation. This is something separate and away from federal legislation. The thing that you have to remember, and I ask a lot of folks this all the time, everybody says that they follow the Constitution of the United States. Under the Constitution of the United States, it says, Article 6, that all treaties entered into by the authority of Congress shall be the supreme law of the land. This land that we're sitting on, not here, but down over there, was carved out by treaty. It was carved out in two treaties, the 1829 Treaty of Prairie du Chien, and again, it was left in 1832, the Treaty of Chicago. Congress had plenty of opportunity to disestablish that reservation because the Prairie Band Potawatomi signed 18 additional treaties after 1832. Congress never did that. They never, whether it was their oversight or maybe they actually wanted Shabbona to stay here. They never disestablished it. So, with those treaties, the other important piece is called the Indian Non-Intercourse Act. So some of you history buffs out there, of course, before the Constitution was enacted, the U.S. or the United States was operating under the Articles of Confederacy. So they had to be able to figure out who can make treaties with tribes. Number one, making sure that tribes are not extorted, that they are treated fairly, and that they work cooperatively together. Congress passed one of the first laws of the United States was called the Indian Non-Intercourse Act, and in that federal law, that gave Congress the ability to establish and disestablish reservations. It also made it so that only Congress can negotiate treaties with any other body. At that time, a majority of that was with Indian tribes. Now they have expanded that to other nations and other jurisdictions and things like that. So those are two key points that have been argued in federal court, the U.S. Supreme Court, on multiple cases where they said once a treaty has been signed into and agreed, that treaty is still in effect until Congress disestablishes that. Fast forward, and here we are today. There was a case in Oklahoma, it's called McGirt versus Oklahoma, and in that, Justice Gorsuch wrote the majority of opinion, and again reaffirmed that once land was carved out by treaty, that it still exists, which is why now today Oklahoma is still half of the state is all Indian tribe or Indian reservation, and they're working through those problems down there today. Also, before I forget, under the Indian Non-Intercourse Act, it also specifically states that it cannot be an individual or a group of individuals that try to disestablish a reservation. It has to be the tribe that signed that reservation or signed that treaty that is negotiated with that land and then, of course, passed through Congress. So, to date, Prairie Band has not entered into another treaty disestablishing the reservation, and we have not engaged Congress to ask them to do that. I know that there was some questions about, well, he sold the land, he did this, he did that. Again, under the Non-Intercourse Act, that was an illegal sale. And I cannot tell you, or you probably have heard, the number of times folks, not just Indians, but regular folks, have been swindled because they didn't know the law. and they lost a lot of their land, their property, or things like that because somebody that was supposed to know swindled them out of it. And we hear those stories all the time. So too happened to us. So those are kind of the main points. The federal legislation that we have in right now, and that is backed by Senator Duckworth, Senator Moran, our home state senator, Senator Marshall. Senator Moran has just got on Indian Affairs Committee, so now we're hoping that we can get that pushed through. But really, that onus lies on you. You have to contact those U.S. Congress people, those U.S. senators to say, we need to get this fixed. Because I've been up there for 6 years now, trying to get this bill pushed forward, heard, get it done with no traction. I think the last one that I went to in the House was Representative Hagman, who was on the subcommittee of natural resources. She's a representative in Wyoming, and we actually had a hearing on that, but it never went anywhere. So it pretty much died on the floor. In that federal legislation, that is the thing that we were asking, is that everyone within the boundaries of that original reservation has clear title. That's the main point that we're asking for. So that you can sleep at night, you can pass your property on to your kids, you can sell it. The only thing that we're hoping for is that, you know, within the original boundaries of that reservation, that if we could get the right of first refusal, or at least have an opportunity to bid on it. That's really the only thing that we're asking, and that's not even in the federal law. That bill that was filed, and of course Congress ran out, so now there's a new Congress, which will be Monday. They get sworn in, which will be the 119th Congress, I believe. Now we have to start the process all over again. So once the Congress ends, then you got to start the process all over again, trying to get that bill introduced again, and hopefully get it heard. The last one it was filed under was Senate Bill 1492. So that was where we're at with there. Now, the state park. This was separate and totally different from whatever federal legislation was. When the Department of Interior placed those 139 acres in our state in trust for the nation, that was the land that we had purchased in 2006. We have been tax-paying constituents since 2006, almost longer than you've been alive. And, and so we have been paying our fair share of taxes and everything like that. Last year, they placed the land into trust. That's kind of a historic thing because they recognize that that treaty, number one, was never disestablished, and that has been reaffirmed by the Solicitor General from Interior in 2001. Again, Leslie and Jordan. Leslie was the he was a sub solicitor, and then Jordan was like the main top guy of Interior in 2001. And he's the one that did all the historical documentation, all the work, reviewed everything that the nation had submitted, and he reaffirmed that, number one, that reservation was never disestablished, and he gave us 3 courses of action to do. Number one was we could take it to court, meaning we could sue people for trespass on the land. We've never done that. Number 2 is we could get Congress to fix it. And we have been actively working to get Congress to try and correct this problem. Number 3, we could just forget about it. Well, obviously, this has been going on for so long that we're not just going to forget about it. We've got to correct this. And honestly, if you are a homeowner within the boundaries of that reservation, there's a possibility that your insurance could say, well, we're going to have to jack the price up on you because there is kind of what they call clouded title, which means that the tribe could come in and say, this is Indian land and we're going to take it over. We have never went the judicial route. We have never went anywhere other than that. You know, and I want to point out that this building here, how many have donated more than $1,000 to any of the activities around here? The nation has too. This roof, we helped pay for that. The Christmas program, we donated money to that. The 4th of July fireworks, we've donated money to that. In excess of $1,000. Also too, in 2008, we brought up our equipment and our personnel to help with the flooding at the lake on our dime. So it's not like we're out here trying to, you know, kick everybody out and do those things that, you know, everybody is saying, or blow up the lake or nothing like that. No. You know, we're trying to be good neighbors and to build help with the community here. On top of that, the nation has stepped up, and we understand that there's a wastewater treatment problem here in the village. We said that we're going to pay for the feasibility study, which we would connect with Kewashki Water Reclamation Service from here to Waterman, and then from Waterman up to that line up there to help with the wastewater reclamation. So those are some of the things that we're doing on the backside to help the community out.
Appreciate it. I want to make sure that we're able to ask some questions, but I got two from the chat that I want to address here coming over the live stream. How long will Lake Shabbona be open to the public? As far as the state's concerned, it will continue to be open to the public until this land management agreement is made. The land management agreement itself can only be made for up to 7 years. So if that's built in, and which I'm assuming we're going to continue to do, it'll be open for at least until the agreement's made, and 7 years past that, and then it's up to you guys, and you've said that
Right.
where you've been on it. So
the deal is that lake and that park was built with federal funds. That was under a conservation fund called Johnson Dingle, which the state had applied for that grant, got those federal funds. If we were to change the park or the conservation of that, then we would have to pay back 80% of the appraised value of the park. We're not going to do that. I think that if we do something here, that it's going to enhance the experience out there. And one of the things that Denny had given me was the residents here had submitted a survey on what they would like to see out in the park. And I just have that. Did I throw it away or what? No. Oh, I got it buried in here. But that was done in 2013. So just quickly scanning over that. Oh yeah. One of the things that I noticed was the people here that filled out the survey said, overwhelmingly that they would like to come out to, they would like to have lodging out on the lake. 2013, this was submitted, but nothing has ever been done with that. And this isn't.
You had already promised things to the town, and
this wasn't our survey. This is.
Ma'am, just if you may, just hang on for 1 second. Let's go circle back on topic here.
Okay.
So how long will it be? It's your intention to keep it open longer.
Our intention is to keep it open longer.
How long is the agreement with IDNR? The agreement with IDNR is for 7 years. That's the longest that agreement can be via statute.
Yeah, initially. And part of that is going to have to be what are the expenses? Because we don't have any idea. What are the expenses? What are some of the deferred maintenance that has happened out there? We know that some of the roads are bad, so we're going to have to kind of take a look at that. Also, whether anybody wants to admit it or not, under the state EPA, we also found out that the water is distressed. From my understanding, most of the waterways in Illinois are distressed. That one there has phosphates and mercury in it. So we're going to have to kind of work through that process too, to how we can get that remediated. So there's a lot of issues there that we're going to have to look at.
Perfect. Questions from the group for either myself or Chairman? Who's? Yep. Yes, sir.
From what you said earlier, then about treaty and all this, I would take it then on that sale that Chief Shabbona made of that 320 acres, June 22nd, 1839. He sold that to that man from LaSalle County.
Right.
That was not a legal sale.
No, it was not. And that's illegal by federal law. And it would be just like if I was a general in charge of a military base and I tried to sell some of the land. That is federal land. And only the Congress can authorize the sale of any of that.
Yes, sir.
How much of the state park is actually part of the original Indian tract?
There is,
Exact figure.
the exact figure, no. I haven't looked at the appraisal, but from what I can tell, outside of the reservation, it's about 800 acres. Somewhere's around there. So
I think it's 42%. 42%.
So if you look at the golf course, that was the end boundary of the reservation. So all of that straight down, and then part of the park. So that was some of the conversation that we had with the state too, is that the United States government said that this is an Indian reservation. So the Supreme Court has ruled on many cases that the tribe retains civil regulatory authority over its lands. What is civil regulatory authority? Hunting, fishing, driving violations, anything like that. That is under the tribe's jurisdiction.
So how many acres of the park is not included in the Indian reservation?
About 800.
800 acres?
Yeah.
It's not included.
Yeah.
So there's that was part of
That's quite a chunk of land.
and that was part of what we discussed on the floor with Representative Guzzardi, because it was in the original treaty. It was 2 parcels of 640 acres,
1,200 total.
1,280 total. Yep. And the state park is a little better than 1,500 acres. So that was one of the things that were brought up. That the entirety of the park was within this legislation, as written.
And they're giving up 800 acres
That was not included in the original agreement. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. What's that? No, that's
Well,
completely
technically-
separate. So
Yeah, technically it still does, and so that's going to be part of the process, is working through that as well.
So the other, what it was is that 1,280 acres was a good chunk of it is state park, and the rest is about 35 private property owners. And so, yeah, you know well then. And so those properties will still have clouded titles until Congress moves forward and says that those are no longer affected, and it takes the entirety of the 1,500 and some of the park. As long as it takes Congress,
I'm
to
going
pass
to
it.
DC
And
the
that was-
1st of February. I've been going to DC, almost once a month.
Couldn't that have been established before any of this took place?
I mean,
That should have been a resolution before anything else moved forward.
that's what you have to talk with your senators and your representatives.
And you
I would-
have no problem pushing forward without having that resolved.
We have a reservation today that is what is considered checkerboard, meaning that there are non-tribal folks within the boundaries of the reservation. Everybody still operates the same way. So it is, to us, a non-issue.
Can I ask why you're taking so much additional land than what you have rights to?
I'm not taking any land. The only thing that I am looking at is the original boundaries of the reservation. This is what the state of Illinois had proposed to us. I didn't kick this.
Yes, sir.
How many acres is total private residential land, or not?
I know it's about 35 properties.
Yeah,
I don't know
I
the
don't
exact
know.
acreage of that. And that's my fault for not
Yeah,
knowing it.
I don't know the total amount, so the golf course right over there, that housing where we have two houses, those ones there are in the original boundary. And then down there by the railroad, I can see some in there. I honestly don't know the total amount.
Yes, sir.
In your debate, you raised concerns with what was not included in the bill.
Mm-hmm.
And now that the bill has passed, you've referenced multiple times the DNR agreement. To what extent do you, as a state representative, have the ability to provide input into the Department of Natural Resources? Because obviously your legislative branch, their executive branch, how is that going to look specifically?
I'm going to insert my nose in it. I mean, how much authority do I actually have? I mean, technically by letter of the law, none. That's the governor's office, and the Department of Natural Resources is a branch of the office of the governor. So I'm going to continue to, advocate for your wishes, but you have to also advocate for yourselves. It's about sending letters to the governor. It's about sending letters to the Department of Natural Resources and the chairman himself, and making sure that, all the things that you feel have to happen in order to make this as much of a successful transition as can be had with it. Yes, sir, in the back.
Directed to the chairman. If I'm understanding you correctly, Congress is the one that has to give these folks their clear title.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to say, I hope, that you are supporting their actions and that you're not going to have any roadblocks to that process.
Nope, and I've been up there, I've been the chairman for the past 6 years, and that has always been my message. And the multiple town halls that we have talked with folks here, that, you can ask some of them, I have always said that. We're not going to go the judicial route. We're not going to, take anybody's home. We need to get this corrected.
From the chat, is the nation going to allow the restaurant and boat rental businesses to continue?
We made a commitment that all existing contracts will remain in place.
Okay.
When I went over there and met with them, I talked with him and I said, well, as long as it's profitable, I have no problem continuing the relationship. And if it is, I don't see why not. Right now, we let them store their boats over in our barn all winter. And we don't even charge them anything for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
Is that an intention?
Probably right now, when you're talking federal legislation, everything has to have a budget score. Of course, we were asking for damages initially for the denied use of land. That drove up the budget score. Given now the composition of Congress, that's probably not going to happen, especially if they're looking at trying to trim off $1 trillion of the federal budget. We're still operating under a CR, so they haven't even passed the budget yet. So I do not anticipate us putting that in there, and we're going to have to shift and look at a different avenue, which would be the Court of Claims, which is kind of the judicial route for us to bring a claim against the federal government.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I'm one of your neighbors out there. I know something that you were working on. But, we're very upset about the whole thing. And one of my main concerns right now is we're very well spoken, appear to be very knowledgeable about the whole history of what happened, but we have very good historians that have researched it and said otherwise, that the 1829 treaty never made it a reservation, nor the 1833 treaty. There's a lot of paperwork that supports that, and I'm thinking that the issue is going to be pushed as we end up in court, and we have a very good argument against what you're claiming.
The only thing that I can go off of, like I said, was the Solicitor General's opinion in 2001. And they are the ones that pretty much said, this is where it stands today. You know, again, and also there is Supreme Court precedents.
Yes, ma'am, because I cut you off earlier. Apologize.
Just for clarification, so you said that the state came to you
Yep.
or to the tribe.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the goal of the state? Why would they come to you and just say, here, you can have this? Wasn't there something trade, I mean,
That was a Mark Walker deal.
No, that was before that. I don't know. I can't speak for the state. I can't speak for those folks there.
and why is the state willing to pay you money on top of giving you an entire state park?
The state is not paying us any money. The federal government is, but part of that is
What is the purpose of that?
denied use of land.
But you're getting the land.
Oh no, we're not getting all the land. We just heard from the gentleman right there that he's our neighbor that has a house there. That is denied use of land. Yeah, that we do not have any control over. So there's the golf course. We don't have control over that, and that is denied use of land. The railroad that runs through the southern portion. We didn't agree to that. Again, they made those agreements long before I was here.
That's the federal government piece versus the state piece.
Yeah.
So the state, two colleagues from 3 counties away took it upon themselves to run this piece of legislation, which is again different from what the federal government needs to do in order to clear titles and.
Now the senator that represented this area supported it.
Not from here either.
Yeah.
She was given this area added on to her area.
No, the Senator Stoller. Yeah, and Representative Demmer, we met with him and he supported it.
They don't live.
Well, you know, neither does Representative Fritz.
Well, he lives close enough.
He lives in Dixon, you know, so.
We could drive to Dixon and see him.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I'm asking you, since we already established that we will not be able to impact on the DNR with the contract for the 7 years, can you make a point to put in the contract for us in the community that you would notify us that you will not renew that contract with like 18, 24 months ahead of time? So it's not dropped on us, oh, by the way, you got 60 days, the state park is no longer going to be the state park, to give us ability to regroup.
I mean, you know, our commitment has always been that it's going to be a park.
And I right now, but I come from the perspective, I have family that was affected in Flambeau, Wisconsin. So what you say now could be like, I'm looking at you because you're the next generation. You could say 10 years from now, like, I don't want, well, no, we're keeping the land here. I want something to give us comfort
I
from
am
you.
not going to limit another tribal council into any agreement other than what I can make today.
You will not put anything in writing to guarantee the park remains as it is.
It's going to be a park for at least 7 years
Or
today.
at least notify us
Yeah.
accordingly for
Yeah.
business.
For at least 7 years.
Yeah. That's how long the management agreement is
Pete.
going to last.
I'm probably not gonna convince Chairman Rupnick, but universally in the 19th century, as part of federal officials, nobody thought the 1829 Treaty of Prohibition granted reservation title. And in 2008, the tribe had petitioned the National Indian Gaming Commission, part of the Department of Interior, to open a casino. And if the NIGC had thought that the tribe had reservation title, that would have been a no-brainer. But they didn't do that.
Exactly. And I can probably speak to that a little bit too, because and there was a lot of pushback from the state of Illinois. And when we were looking at that initially, the Attorney General for the state of Illinois said that if there are any machines that cross state lines, we're going to confiscate it. And so that was the initial push that the tribe was trying to make.
Yes, sir. So, Congresswoman Underwood's federal bill is probably dead for a while.
Yeah.
And we all know that.
Yeah.
So how we have county board members sitting here, Farm Bureau members sitting here, our next concern, and I've said this publicly, is the importance are in, I told them, pick your poison here, guys. Let's maybe concede the park, but the intergovernmental agreements, the town agreements, the IDNR agreements. But how, if you're so in favor of protecting those 39 property rights, what do we need to do to get that done? Because that's what the bulk of the people here are concerned about, is clear title.
The number 3 Democrat in the Senate, I've met with him 2 or 3 times, and he pretty much said, well, I'm not going to support your legislation. He's your hometown or home state senator, Senator Durbin. And he said, he goes, I am sympathetic to your cause, but I'm not going to support your legislation. And Senator Durbin, I think since his whole time in Congress, he's only supported 5 pieces of Indian legislation. Senator Duckworth, of course, another high-ranking person. We do have bipartisan support, like I said. Senator Moran, Senator Marshall. We've got Representative Duckworth that wants to push it through the House. Davids. We have been working on that. It's just with the U.S. Congress, whenever there's a new Congress, everything kind of dies, and then you have to start all over again. So then it has to be refiled. Another number comes in. That's just the way it works. I wished it didn't, but the only thing we can do is go back and try and reintroduce it and get it going again.
I think one of the things that may work out in favor is, at least from a property owner standpoint, I think it's going to be important to reach out to our 3 Republican members of Congress throughout Illinois. It's Congressman LaHood, it's Congressman Miller, and Congressman Bost, and we know what the composition is going to look like for at least the next 2 years. So it may not be your paid damages within it, but at least if you can clear that for yourselves, that would be.
And that's why we're rewriting the legislation to kind of take out the budget score so it doesn't have a budget score. Look at going to the Court of Claims, and looking at what we can do to slim it and trim it down so that it does pass.
Yes.
I was just wondering, what is in the bill you propose right now? It's monetary compensation and clear titles? And if you rework that, what is it gonna be like?
It's going to be clear title, and then it has to have a vehicle for us to go to court of claims. So there isn't going to be a dollar amount attached to the bill. The only reason why we put it in the bill initially was because our representative said, "Look, I can get this. I can get this for you." And we put it in. That bill has probably been rewritten 6 or 7 times since I've been in, and it kind of goes back and forth like we're playing tennis. This is the last, another, version of that bill.
10 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes, because I got to catch a flight.
Follow up to that, when the tribal council decides or arrives at the new language for the new bill that you're talking about, when and how would that be shared with our community?
I generally attend the village meeting every month. Haven't done it for a couple of months because of the weather, but typically I'm here at the village meeting every month, and I bring up that information. Where we're at with federal legislation, what's going on here, where we're at with the state, some of the other things that are needed to be discussed.
If everybody signed in, if you're willing to share that with us, we're happy to push that out as well from our office. At least the status of the federal stuff. Yes, ma'am.
Have agreements with the county sheriff, with the fire department. Those are very, very old.
Yes. And we're trying to work with the county on those ones there too, because that also invites other problems. Now that the federal government has recognized that this treaty and this language still exists, that it's in here, there is not Illinois is not a public law 280, which means an agreement between Indian tribes and law enforcement. So we have been meeting with the county to work those agreements out.
And also, at least from my end, every state that has reservation land within it, and we do now because of the actions, not with the park, but prior to that, every state has their own set of statutes. So I'm working with a colleague state senator out of Kansas, and that'll be part of my legislative package moving forward, is putting in to Illinois statute some of the framework as we move forward with how intergovernmental agreements work, and just for sure the health and safety stuff.
Yeah. That all depends on the management agreement. And right now, I'll tell you, I'm not a lawyer, and I hate lawyers, but because they tend to over lawyer stuff. And when you're working with DNR lawyers and tribal lawyers, this thing could take, 2 months. It could take 6 years. I honestly don't know. No, because it's not eligible for tax today.
But you are on the houses.
No, because those were placed in trust.
Including the one you just recently purchased?
No, that one there is not.
That's not
But
Right.
there is a possibility of that going into the management agreement, that would go on the tax rolls until it becomes part of federal trust, because it's going to no longer be property of the state of Illinois. So that's something to consider sending either myself or the governor and director of the Department of Natural Resources for sure. So I know that's a concern.
Now I would oppose that.
Well, you probably want to be careful with that because the way the park was established too.
Yeah.
So we'll see if you.
But I'm just, yes, sir.
The county and the township highways that border the zone, I believe the county has asked for those to basically become full county property instead of owning to the center of the road.
Mm-hmm.
Splitting, is that about?
The tribe has been a little resistant on that.
Is there a reason why?
Because that's all the easement and the right of ways. It's the same with anybody else that owns property in the state of Illinois. So why should we be treated any different?
Because you don't pay taxes to take care of the road.
You know, but we have. We've been paying taxes since 2006. Not today. And I don't know.
The water treatment plant that you wanna, will that be on your property or the?
No, that works out with the water reclamation service. I ain't got nothing to do with it, other than I'm paying. Yeah, I'm paying for it. So it'd be a pump station from Shabbona to Waterman and then back up there.
They're where?
Wherever,
Kishwaukee's.
wherever Kishwaukee, where they can tie into it at.
That's the point.
Their Waterman was the ones that were really pushing it. That is,
Will be determined in the
Yeah.
feasibility study. And
yeah,
that's what they're paying
that's
for.
what we're paying for initially is the feasibility study. What is that going to be? The cost? How is that going to work? So there's a lot of things to work out.
You guys have to get going.
Yeah.
5 minutes, yeah. All right. Yes, sir, by the bookshelf.
If you own property, such as a house or a business that's on the tribal land, and you want to build a building, do I have to go through the tribal?
Yes. That's civil regulatory. So the planning and zoning and all of that is through us.
Through you?
Yep.
But there's
As of today, or
As of April 19th, 2024.
Maybe you could give them an example of what we do in here.
Yeah.
that's what I was just going to say. So one of the things is when I went out to visit that you had talked about is there are non-native people who own land on the reservation, and state law still governs,
Absolutely.
even though they, so you still pay taxes to
Yeah.
the state in Kansas.
Yeah.
And that's where some of this legislation that I was talking about is going to have to come from, with how that works.
So we wouldn't go to the county or the village for permits for building or adding on or anything?
If you're on the reservation proper, then yes, you would want to contact us. And in our, that was with our planning and zoning folks, and they have a website, prairiebandpotawatomination.org.
But we're actually in the village.
Oh yeah, village, no, I ain't got nothing to do with that.
But we're within.
But we're within the.
We're in the village.
As of today,
Yeah.
the only things that are in trust are the prior land that they had purchased themselves.
Okay.
So that's the only thing that pertains to as of today.
Okay, so only the properties that you own, not.
We have to work that out.
So you're in construction now.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well,
All right.
Zeke, I appreciate you fielding some questions, and I'm happy to stick around all night. So.
Good. All right. Yes, sir. All right, Danny. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you. Good to see you guys.
I hope you start answering my calls again, Brad.
Answering them?
Yeah. I tried to reach out to you a few times when I was student.
I didn't?
So we can talk about it.
Yeah.
See you, buddy.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
The land management, who will pay for the
I'm sorry. Go
The
ahead.
land management with the DNR,
Yeah.
who pays for that? We will pay the state taxpayers?
Currently, the way the bill was written, that is subject to appropriation, meaning if the General Assembly continues to appropriate it for it to be cared for by IDNR, it'll be cared for by IDNR for at least 7 years.
So all expenses to upgrades and all that will be paid for by our taxpayers.
Yes.
And they're not one of them.
So that's all that's it.
Any other questions for me? I guess, and also, suggestions for things that need to be a part of this land management agreement.
Can we just get back down to the basics? What is a land management agreement?
a land management agreement is what is required to be entered into for that 7-year period. So IDNR sits down with the Prairie Band, they come up with what IDNR is going to continue to provide and what things that the community needs to see out of them. And once they agree to all the terms of it, and the state agrees to all the terms of it, that's when the actual deeding process takes place. And it can go for a 7-year period amount of time, and after that point then, so during that time period, if any of that agreement's violated, then it could be taken back. But once that agreement is up and it becomes entirely their land, then it can be subject to be put into federal trust. And then it becomes no longer part of the state of Illinois, essentially. Yes, Pete?
Why 7 years?
Why 7 years? Because that's what statute spells out right now.
Which statute? Because you can enter into contracts longer than 7 years. Is this something specific to tribes? Or is this
I don't know the exact answer to that. I just remember when going through debate, our legal team said that's kind of the set number for what you can have for a land management agreement. We have certain time periods set into place for certain things. Senator, hang on, Senator Johnson.
Actually, during the Senate hearing on this bill, the tribal lobbyists said that they were under obligation to only have a contract up to, and I want to emphasize the up to 7 years. That's all they could do.
Yes.
Yeah, from the tribes lobby.
So yeah, it'll be that 7-year period, and then if if the federal government sees it as that, it theoretically could be terminated, but hey, we'll see how that plays out. Yes, ma'am.
So just clarifying again, after 7 years, they can do whatever.
Like drain the lake?
Huh?
Remove the dam, any of that?
They have to pay that back.
They can do whatever they want.
Even if it affects everyone downstream from it?
They can do whatever they want.
So my question in regards to the violations, I know we're going to be monitoring them for violations, so
and I would just like to introduce as well, this is John Bemis. He's the lobbyist who represents Prairie Band Potawatomi as well. So
I was sticking around here in case there's any questions on behalf of the nation. I can't speak on their behalf, and talk to them extensively throughout the month. So
yeah. I'm sorry.
Well, we have, I guess I want to know what more the violations will be transparent with everybody in the community. Like, if they violate and do wrong, and what is it that we got to make sure that we do right, so we don't violate for them to have an excuse to break that 7-year contract early.
Yeah, so it's going to be whatever terms
both parties agree to within that land management agreement, and that'll be a public document when it's all said and done and entered into, and then it'll be, we'll be holding each other accountable to it, and any violations will be taken up in court, one way or the other.
They can build a casino out there?
It is not the intention of the tribe at this point.
At this point.
But 7 years from now, they could decide that's what they want to do.
But John, if you want to, go ahead.
There's a couple of restrictions in law. So there's 3 types of Indian gaming in federal law.
Hey, John, you want to come up here because I know there's.
Yeah. There's 3 types of Native American gaming in federal law: Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3. Class 2, a tribe can do by right. That's bingo. Class 3 is a full gaming casino with table games that you can imagine like any other casino. They can't do that without entering into an agreement with the state. That's a requirement. We have an additional protection in Illinois that the General Assembly would need to approve the building of a casino. As I think you're all aware, there was a massive casino expansion in 2018, 2019. There's now a casino in Rockford. We are equidistant from Aurora, Elgin. If they ever wanted to, there would be massive opposition, but they have stated publicly that's not their intention. We also said on the floor we're willing to explore other restrictions, potential legislation, but we have been very public that that's not their intention.
Yes. Either one of you. Go.
Do we have a voice with the Illinois DNR? Is there any way we can contact them and voice what we want?
Absolutely.
that can be done through letters and emails with the director of the Department of Natural Resource herself. She's a very level-headed person, but she's also underneath Governor Pritzker, and it'll be the administration itself. So between the director and the governor's office, I think it's incredibly important to make sure that things are voiced. You all did a great job in terms of weighing in as far as witness slips goes throughout the legislative process, and I would hope you will continue that as we go through the executive process and implementation thereof.
Could we get them out here for a town hall meeting?
I can put in a request. In the back there, sir. Yes.
Yes, you said they cannot build a casino without state approval?
So they can't build a casino without approval from the administration. We have an additional protection that there actually has to be legislation that passes. So even if the governor wanted to do it on his own, he couldn't without passing a bill from the General Assembly. And I think he can affirm that would be very, very difficult, if not impossible, to pass.
Even if they gain sovereignty?
Yes, correct. That's in federal law. So there's a federal requirement that requires them to enter into a compact with the state. And the state is bound by state law that they can't enter into the compact without legislative approval.
So that's the legislative approval side for sure. It was our understanding, legal interpretation from House Republican staff anyway, and I know we've had a disagreement on this, but it was our interpretation that financiers, banking institutions, they require there to be a compact in place. And so often you need a lot of capital in order to put a facility like that together. So that's a banking institution's requirement. I don't know what that would look like otherwise, but I think John had spoken to, and the tribe and the sponsor of the bill had spoken to, they believe that's protected in federal law as well. So
I would just say, not a lot of comfort, but if there weren't these restrictions in place, I think other casinos and other casinos lobbyists would have been much more adamantly opposed to this. I think the existing casinos attorneys looked at this and understand those protections in the law.
Any other questions? Back of the room, I saw a lot of head nodding. Questions back there?
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
The state park crosses Shabbona Road for about 30 acres. Why give that away and cause Shabbona Road to be compromised by the treaty?
Because that's the way the legislation was drafted. It was not my legislation.
I mean, why wouldn't it be easier to give that land to the county so that road can stay open?
And again, this will be things that I look forward to, working with my colleague from Kansas who has extensive knowledge on these topics to introduce a legislative agenda that goes into putting in some of those protections in place and entering into the agreements to make sure that those roadways are able to stay open when this, and again, right now, this is not, it's not sovereign land. It's still DeKalb County. It's still park as of today. And it won't change until that management agreement's in place. And then a 7-year period after that.
I could say we're going to close Shabbona Road because they're crossing our property. And that's the main highway, everything south.
In theory, I would hope, and I don't believe that Zeke would do that, but that's all we can. That's all we do. All we can do at this point is take him at his word. So.
Set up a toll booth.
How long is the term of the chairman? Do you know?
Yeah, he has another 2 years in office.
So he could be voted out.
Scary. That's very scary.
I think after returning this land to his people, that seems unlikely if he were to want to run again. I don't know the politics of the nation, but
well, and that was again some of the pushback that I had is making sure some of these things were codified because we can take the chairman at his word and he seems very genuine in his word, but that doesn't mean that he's going to be here in 10 years just as much as doesn't mean that I'm going to be here in 10 years to honor verbal agreements that I make with you.
I mean, one thing that we point out often is that the nation has entered into more treaties with the United States government than any other nation. They've never broken one, and every one of them has been broken. They're very thoughtful about their commitments and being good to their word. But you also have the other members of the tribal council who've been very engaged in this, and he speaks on their behalf. So, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Looking down, I think Freshman shared a map on Facebook of what they're giving and what was the original reservation.
Yeah, that was the Brad.
Okay. Where did that come from? The reason why I'm asking, related to Tom's question about, the county road.
Sorry, I should have brought printout copies, and that's my fault. But
on the southeast corner along the railroad. Where it goes
southeast,
north,
yep, down here.
East up the railroad.
Yep.
There's a triangle of property that belongs to the state park that is not included in that boundary. For people around here, it's a triangle that goes from the railroad trestle on Shabbona Grove Road over on the other side of the creek. So they're not, nowhere is this ground crossing, the ground is following the railroad tracks.
So I got it.
So right here, it's labeled INR right there. That's that parcel there, this whole triangle here, because it's the Mullins and then the Nearings. So,
I got you now.
So I guess my question would be, we talked about the road being an issue. I had heard little scuttlebutt about the railroad tracks. Wasn't going to give them property on either side of the railroad track. Is that true? Isn't it true? Is it just a mapping error? Is it, what happens to it? About how many acres?
There's 4 there in the field, but there's more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to dig into that, but I know.
We'll trade that for the piece on Shabbona Road.
Yeah, I'll have to dig into that. I don't know why that didn't extend around there, but I think it followed the railroad just so it didn't jump. But yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, railroad's a big entity.
The other major issue with the roads is
Google what's going on up in Wisconsin, where Indian tribes have taken some land. They are disallowing municipalities, mail delivery, school buses from using those roads.
EMF not allowed to go down the road.
And sometimes they get an agreement with employees to be able to have it, but basically they do it annually, and they're still having scuttlebutt about it. That's why we need to make sure we own the roads.
Didn't he just say right there that he did not?
Well, that INR can get that involved.
I think that's an important thing to put out in the management agreement and something to be potentially put in on as far as. So I think it's important for the county to take a stand on that as well.
And the reason I went
from a government side.
I went to the back of the room to check with the people that live on the road.
Yeah.
If there was fiber on either side, right now they believe the only fiber is on the north side of Preserve. Otherwise, that would affect everything as well if there's anything. And honestly, Soil and Water is going to have an interesting event with this because no soil and water rules apply as well.
Again, this is very, very much unprecedented, so I can't speak to those. I can say that that's something that I'll definitely be pushing on to make sure that it's part of that agreement. And hopefully through the legislative framework and working with my colleagues out of Kansas, we can implement some of those things as well. Yes, sir.
There was discussion after the giveaway bill passed about a so-called trailer bill that's supposed to adjust some things. What is the scope and supposedly prevent a casino? What is the scope of that bill? Status of it?
I don't know. I haven't seen it, and we'll see. I think maybe John represents the interest of that, but I know that was something that was Representative Guzzardi had brought up when he was running the bill.
Yeah, I think the idea was, it was singularly going to be limited to restrictions on gaming. I think there's a conversation that needs to happen of what is allowable in state law that doesn't contradict federal law, but that was the purpose of those conversations.
So online there was a question, are they planning on making housing for tribal residents to live on the land? I can't answer that at this time, but after that agreement's up, it's their land to do what they wish with.
They
Yeah.
do, they already own a couple houses.
They
actually,
own three now.
Yes.
Three. So, and I know they're working on the houses right now. So I figured there could be somebody coming in.
So how,
Could be.
how's the first right of refusal work as far as legislation wise?
It's not written in anywhere that I'm aware of at this point.
They're
in time.
asking.
They're asking, meaning they would like, if you're,
Yeah, because I'm a property owner.
yes, if you want to sell your house for, I'm just going to throw out a figure, whatever you want to sell it for, they want the opportunity to pay that before it goes on the market. And that's just because that was part of their original reservation. But they're
Is there any way we could get that tried to written out?
written out, it's not written in.
We have
before
to,
they put
that's
it in.
part of the federal legislation.
It'd be part of the federal legislation.
We have to deal with our
There's
federal
nothing at the state level that says that at this point in time. Yes.
Can you clarify, we watched online or live what went on the floor and so forth. And Gazzardi stood up there and said that he had full support of the town board.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? Did they get a letter stating that? Is there anything in writing?
Don's there to answer, in the back to answer this, but it's my understanding that the board had ran a resolution and the board itself online slipped in as a witness in favor.
Is there something in writing that says that the town supports?
We have always supported the Potawatomi for what, the past 20 years?
Everybody on board?
Everybody on the board. The board, when I got on the board 5 years ago, prior to that, there was an agreement with the Potawatomi. And since I've been on the board has been in support of the Potawatomi.
So the village actually, excuse me. So the village did slip in favor, and that's what he was referring to.
One of the city council members has been posting on Facebook that he was not in favor of this.
And his name was not on the letter.
Then why did you say that they were in favor?
And the whole board is not in favor.
The whole board is not in favor.
Right.
So if the majority of the board was in favor, it's different than saying
Not the
everybody.
whole board.
Denny, was it the majority or everybody?
Interesting.
I don't know, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You were talking about the different degrees or levels of gambling.
Yes, sir.
Is there any chance they would not maybe go for tier number 3 and just say we want bingo or that type of thing? Would they have better luck getting that?
So they can do that by right in federal law. The discussion on the floor was ways to potentially limit them. It's going to be difficult just because state law can't supersede federal law, but that was the discussion, that there wouldn't be any gaming in the park.
Even bingo, just nothing, basically.
That was what was set up for us.
But they have an inherent right to do so. Just under
No
federal
gaming
law.
in the park. But there's Indian land outside the park,
Yes, there is.
so they can do what they will.
The class 3 restrictions would still impact that land as well.
impact.
Yeah, any Native American reservation. And just broadening out, I mean, this is all new, right? Illinois has never had a federally recognized tribe. We understand, this is unique. It's a lot all at once. You guys have been super engaged. We try to be open. We try to be here to answer questions and be available. So one thing I would suggest, and I'm going to have to go in a little bit, but Brett, we worked well with Representative Fritz until this concept of transferring the state park, and we will continue to. So I think concerns around the land management agreement of things that you want to include, I think if you want to collect them, we can work with you on it. The land management agreement, a lot of it's just going to be the legal components of what it looks like. How do we honor contracts? What does it mean for employees there? But it's unprecedented in the state. So we're willing to take suggestions and probably be pretty open about like this is potentially could be included, this potentially can't for whatever reasons, or it's outside the scope of the agreement. But I think Representative Fritz might be a good person to collect those.
Yeah. Becky?
I just have one quick question. I feel like the whole park thing has kind of taken over like, they have reservation land, so what are the, like, laws with building something on the reservation land? Like, say they wanted to come in tomorrow and put up a casino, can they do that?
As long as they're not in violation of the classes that are put in place, yes.
Yeah, we couldn't do a casino, right? But in terms of like what they would want to do on that land.
They don't need to, like, be approved by DeKalb County.
They could put in a water park if they wanted, or
They could put a park.
I'm not an expert, but as their sovereign territory, yeah, I believe they have pretty wide
Those
jurisdiction.
3 houses and that whatever amount of acres that other farm that they own is, all those are in federal trust now, and they are foreign land.
Because I feel like the park is like a distraction, right? Like, we've got this big field that they have so much they can do, and the park is just a bonus. Like, everybody's forgetting about this field.
Well, and that's why whether this agreement goes forward or not, we need to make sure that we're filing the legislation that other states have to, enter into agreements and govern that as much as we can without violating federal law.
You
Yeah,
said
Janet.
the land transfer from the state park to the tribe is unprecedented in the state, but is there other like examples in other states that you can kind of?
Yeah, there's different, and I am not an expert. We have people who know this much better than me. My understanding is that it has happened in other states. Minnesota just turned over land to the Sioux tribe, but I don't believe they were a state park, but there were different circumstances around it. So I'm just not an expert on that, but there are across the country, a number of states have been a part of what's called the land back movement, but this is unique in terms of the state we're here with.
Yeah, Jim back there.
For the lobbying store?
Sir.
You already have a section of Preserve Road, the eastbound lane, and the southbound lane of University Road that is on sovereign nation property. The best I can find is a 10-year-old document from the Oklahoma Attorney General that tells me what are the legal rules on that property. And I was just wondering, can you put me in touch with somebody that could tell us what are the rules on sovereign nation roads?
Yeah, I don't know that, and the chairman was, I mean, I think we can ask the chairman, or we can ask the nation to get back to you on that. I don't know the answer, sir.
And hopefully we can clarify some of those things as we start to work with Kansas on bringing some of those things in as well. And I just say Kansas, I'm happy to look into how other states operate as well. I just that's where the tribe itself is from, and it's where I have legislative connections there.
How does hunting and fishing go right now with the lake? I mean,
How does hunting and fishing go? It is the exact way it currently operates, the way it's operated for as long as it's operated.
State law.
There's nothing, it's all under state law. Nothing changes until an agreement's made, and then after that agreement's made, when it's entered into federal trust, then that's when everything changes. But until that point, nothing is changing as of today. I mean, there's still agreements and plans within IDNR to continue to do upkeep and whatever else, and I mean they're not backing down from any of their plans, so it'll be interesting to see.
I mean, we don't need to put new bathrooms in there then.
Yeah, and again, these are things that I will be discussing with the director and hopefully the governor's office as well. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Is there any way to like appeal the decision or anything, or is it just pretty much set? The state park is gone.
Until the land management agreement is come to, and all parties have to be in agreement on it, it operates the way that it is. And so if you have any objections to what that'll look like in the future, I would highly, highly suggest that you voice them to the director and the governor's office. But as far as the General Assembly is concerned, the decision's been made.
And
Has
is
the
the
governor
DN
signed it?
How does the DNR feel about this?
Did you look it up? It has not yet.
been signed.
It has not been signed into law yet. I knew it hadn't last I checked, but I'm not 100% on it. Yes.
Well, in regards to the roads, is that something that can be put in that land management agreement?
I am least familiar with issues surrounding the roads, but as a representative, intimated, like there's 31 states that have Native American tribes within their boundaries. There's precedent for pretty much any question you can come up with. So I don't know that, but I do think there's answers.
Again, everybody has to be in agreement on things. So if the state wants to say you have to cede, that part of it back to allow the rest of it to go, I mean, that can be part of the agreement as well. So, because everybody has to be in agreement to let it happen, at least to my understanding. Any other questions? And feel free, people, if your questions are answered, like I said, I'll stay all night and field questions, but don't let me. I won't think you're rude if you get up and leave. So, and feel free to come in. And
I'm not going to be rude.
Is there a place to map reservation?
yeah, we can email that out. In fact, I'll tell Gabriella right now. We'll make sure to include that in our next e-news that goes out. We'll put that in there. So if you sign up for our e-newsletter that goes every 2 weeks, we'll include that.
We'll let you slide there. Yeah, I hope so, because if I don't make it, somebody's going to get hurt.
If someone wanted to
I got
contact
copies.
DNR, whoever's in charge of putting that together,
Yeah.
they might suggest a longer period of time before it becomes, right now they say 7 years, right?
Yes.
Maybe 20 years, like that. None of that's set in stone.
So that's limited by federal law. Yeah. So there's because Native American tribes were taken advantage of in so many instances in our history, no Native American tribe can be encumbered by any contract for over 7 years. That's federal law.
I got
That's it. Yeah, Denny.
The state legislature, the Senate and the House, what have they passed that is going to the governor to sign?
Yeah. So it's the transfer of the park with conditions in it. Those conditions include it will not transfer until a land management agreement is entered into. There are also issues around the fact that the state received federal funding for the park, significant federal funding, and there are provisions, and this is some level of protection as well. There are provisions in that agreement that if the park is used for anything other than conservation purposes, we would have to pay back, I think it's 90% of the appraised value. And so the state, there's an indemnity clause in the bill that means that in no way, shape, or form would the state ever be on the hook for that.
Okay, what if the governor doesn't sign it for, let's say, 6 months? He sits on it.
So
what happens?
Yeah, the General Assembly has 30 days to send it to the governor. And that they have to do by right, or it gets sent automatically. Then the governor has 60 days to sign it, and if he doesn't sign it within 60 days, it becomes law.
Okay.
The governor has not let anything happen.
Unless he vetoes.
Because we're hopeful that when it comes to the point for the governor to sign that bill, he'll come to Shabbona to sign it.
I believe that's going to be the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's try to bring it back in a little bit. We can save the chit chat for executive session across the street. Yes, sir.
Since anything can be inserted in any contract, when you come to an agreement with the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, is it beyond the realm putting in a clause of perpetuity as far as their responsibility?
So to the point I just mentioned, there's federal law. There's federal law limiting Native American tribes from being encumbered for more than 7 years.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That answers my question.
So no.
Yeah, that's federal.
Any other final questions? Like I said, happy to stay as long as possible.
I was just wondering.
Yes, sir.
when it comes to tribal law, is different than federal law. And if for some reason, say, a car accident on the corner of Preserve and it pushes people into tribal land, what do we have a copy, or can we get to laws that know like what our rights are when we are on tribal property?
And that'll be,
or like if, you know, I've heard like if you get seriously injured, is something, you know, there to hinder your family from helping you or things like that?
there's, again, this will be where, you know, hopefully we'll be able to pass some legislation at the state level that'll continue to allow those agreements to keep fire, EMS, police, etc. in check once that happens. You know, hopefully, as well, it gets a little complicated because if, you know, there's some levels here. So the federal government gets involved, tribal law gets involved, and then state law gets involved. So if there's any disputes, there's potentially multiple courts.
On the federal parcel that's already been turned over to, like, the state doesn't have any jurisdiction there, right? It's all tribal policing. Correct. So what do we, you know, I'm like, how do we know what our rights are on
tribal land? They'll get in an accident on their land. No, I don't, honestly, I don't know the answer. But what I can say for sure, they want clarity as well, right? They want to make sure that it's clear to everyone in the community what it means, so we can help. It's relatively new,
and that's why I hope we can work together on these on a trailer bill here, because we are going to have to encompass some of those things to make sure that that's clear for everyone, so it's not.
But they already have their laws established, right?
What's that?
They already have their laws established. Is there like somewhere we can look at their constitution, look at their laws as they sit right now?
Yeah, I don't know what's applicable to here, or I'm not familiar. Not something I know much about, but we can work with you to make sure that there's information testing.
Or I mean, just say like a naive child, you know, rides their bike and is on their land. He's now subject to their laws, not our laws.
Yeah.
We just want to know what the laws that we have to abide by or are subject to while we're on, like, accidentally on their land.
As far as Illinois is concerned, and that's all I can speak to, there's none at this point. And so that's why we have to put in the guardrails moving forward.
Something piggybacking on that, DeKalb County had an extremely large amount of field fires during harvest this year. And fire departments are called out to go onto those properties to fight fires to keep it from spreading. Does a fire department from Shabbona get to go onto that and maintain fire control, or what happens there?
I don't know the answer to that at this point in time. I mean, it's not somewhere that's paying fire taxes anymore. And so, well, there is an intergovernmental agreement from way back, and I was talking to the county administrator about it, and I'm not familiar with it myself, and I'm going to have to familiarize myself with it real quick.
Yeah, and that is, it's been our opinion, I think it's the county agrees, that was stale, that was in contemplation of a much larger project. I am not an expert when it comes to Native American law and how it interacts with state and local law, but there's going to have to be agreements with the county and others, so we can try to provide clarity on what that is currently and what that means.
Because
but I mean, do we have can we look at Potawatomi law as it sits?
I don't know that I just don't know if it applies. So we can figure that out
because you're crossing state lines now. Yeah, you can look up online and see what the laws are for the reservation.
That is now in our state.
Yeah.
So I mean, it is. I just want to know if when we go to that other state, if by accident, like what we have to abide by.
Yeah, we can try. The council would have been able to answer that. I can't, but there is an answer to it.
Yeah. Any other final questions from the group? Oh, we got one online.
Planning on going on the land. I just want to know what happens.
All right. So, a question from the chat. Are there real dollar amounts figured that will affect the school district? Currently, tax properties off the tax rolls Is there a desire to expand reservation land in the future? At this point in time, the only land that came off the tax rolls already did with regards to what was put into federal trust. The park itself isn't taxed currently. And what's that?
Lots of sales tax.
Well,
We pay real
yeah,
estate
sales
taxes
tax,
too.
real estate.
Real
What's
estate
that?
tax.
We pay real estate taxes for the park along with our lease.
With the building.
Yeah.
And I do for the.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize. Those, yeah.
They'll go away.
But
Yeah.
when they get the right of, when they buy the house, then we're gonna lose that.
If they continue to buy additional property and put it into federal trust, then yes, that
Sounds
could
like
be the
that's what they
case.
want.
That's their intent.
And then when they build, like if they build an apartment complex, all the kids will come to our school district.
Typically, they
You're-
want their own kids.
You're, John, I don't know how to answer that.
No idea.
I don't know that they have
Some states
schools.
have the option.
But now if they build, just say they build an apartment building, it doesn't necessarily mean that only their people are gonna live in it, does it? They could
No.
rent it out to.
Well, again, and this is where state law will have to come into place and answer these questions moving forward. Like I said, out in Kansas, you can own property that's on the reservation and you continue to pay taxes to the school district and whoever, as long as you are not of native descent. So that gets a little interesting too, because the reservation is responsible for all the maintenance, upkeep, and whatever, but we continue to get the taxes for non-native people living on reservation land. Yes.
Is it the tribe's intention that once the 7-year agreement with the IDNR expires, are they attempting to put that state park then into trust as well?
So I think it'll be immediate.
They will want to put it into trust. Yeah, once it is transferred to them and that land being on the reservation. And they didn't address this. I found it a very useful argument, but the questions of the sale and was that legal and what would that have mattered? When the federal government put that 130 acres into trust, regardless of the affirming the Bush administration's Department of Interior opinion, that answered the question, that the federal government recognizes that as their land.
Mm-hmm.
But they will want to put it into trust.
And that can take anywhere from 6 months to 6 years.
Yes, that's right.
Any amount of time.
But it's a lot easier now that they've already got a reservation.
Correct.
Or do we know if
That
the
was-
land
that was
management
first.
agreement would be null if it did go into trust? Would that?
No, because that would be an agreement between the nation and the state.
Okay, so they.
But then, yeah, once
It'd be
that-
binding, yeah.
Yeah. Any other final questions? Going once, going twice. Sold the lady.
Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, that's.
Good job.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out. Any final questions? You can follow up through our office, and we'll keep you in the loop through this process. Have a great night. Safe travels. Thank you.
I just want to thank you.